Let us now open the Chronicles of the Eldar, for their tale is the very foundation upon which all other histories of Middle-earth are built. We must ensure that the memory of the Firstborn does not fade entirely from the knowledge of those who come after. Yes, it is recorded in the Annals of Aman that in the beginning, when the world itself was young, there was only the light of the stars, and it was beneath those ancient wheeling stars that the firstborn children of Iluvatar opened their eyes upon a world that was as yet unmarred by sorrow. They were called the Quendi, which means those who speak with voices, and they awoke by the starlit waters of Cuivienen, the water of awakening, far in the east of Middle-earth. You know, the first sound they ever heard was the gentle flowing of water over stone, and the first light they ever beheld was the silent dance of the stars above them. And for this reason, the Elves have always loved the starlight. They revere Varda Elentari, the Kindler, above all the other powers of the West. This profound love would come to shape their very spirit, their entire history, really, becoming a light to guide them through the long twilight of the world. And so their story began, a path of incredible wonder, but also of many, many partings. And so it was that Orome, the great rider of the Valar, happened upon the Elves as they wandered in the twilight. The Valar, you see, sent forth a summons counseling their newfound kindred to journey west, to remove themselves to the Blessed Realm. And right here, the ancient scrolls tell us this is where the first and greatest sundering of the Elves occurred. Really, the whole history of the Elves is a history of their sunderings. Those who chose to heed the call became known as the Eldar, the people of the stars. But many refused. They preferred the wide open spaces of Middle-earth to a mere rumor of two trees in a distant land. These are the Avari, the unwilling. Of their fate, well, little is told in the Chronicles of the West, because they were sundered from their kin in that ancient, fateful time. So, the Eldar prepared for this great march. They were arrayed in 3 distinct hosts, each with its own lord. And it's from these 3 great kindreds that so many other branches would arise, divided not so much by blood, but by the choices they made on that long, long road to the west. The first and smallest host to set forth was led by Ingwe, whom all elves still revere as their high king. His people are the Vanyar, the fair elves, and they were beloved of Manwë and Varda. They made it all the way to Valinor, and they dwell there still, at the very feet of the powers. And so the Vanyar, for the most part, passed from the histories of the Hitherlands, dwelling forever in bliss. Next came the Noldor, the people of Finwë. They're often called the Deep Elves, friends of Owl the Smith, and they are absolutely renowned in song for their skill. But it was their doom, a doom born of pride and their relentless pursuit of the Silmarils to return to Middle-earth, bringing with them both the greatest works of elvish craft and the deepest sorrows of the First Age. The last and greatest host to come were the Teleri, and their name means just that. They tarried upon the road. They had 2 lords, the brothers Elwë and Olwë, and they found great delight in water, in rivers and shores, and they weren't entirely sure they wanted to pass from the familiar dusk into the brilliant, unknown light. And it's from this one kindred that the greatest number of further sunderings arose. You see, their journey was long and complex. Before they even reached the misty mountains, the Hithiglir, some turned aside under their leader Lenwë, and they became the Nandor. Then, much nearer to the sea, their lord Elwë was lost, enchanted in the forest of Nan Elmoth, and so his people remained behind, becoming the Sindar of Beleriand. Even then, others under Círdan the Shipwright lingered on the coasts, becoming the Falathrim. It was only the very last of the host, led by Olwë, who would finally pass over the Great Sea to Aman. Now, after the utter ruin of Beleriand at the end of the First Age, these ancient divisions found new ways to express themselves. The choices that were made in the starlight of the world's dawn, well, they would go on to shape the fates of entire realms and kings in the ages that followed, a time when the dominion of the Elves began its long, slow fading. Think of the Second Age. Bilgalad stood as High King of the Noldor in Lindon, but over in Eregion, the Noldorin smiths under Celebrimbor, deceived by Sauron, forged the Rings of Power. At that very same time, you had Sindarin lords journeying eastward to rule among the Sylvan Elves, founding realms like the Great Greenwood and Lorinand. And in all this, you can see how the ancient craft of the Noldor and the pride of the Eldar became the very tools of that age's greatest sorrows. By the time of the Third Age, only a few great strongholds remained to preserve the memory of the elder days. In Imladris, or Rivendell as it's also known, Elrond held Vilya, the Ring of Air. Over in Lothlorien, Galadriel kept her land fair and timeless with the power of Nenya, the Ring of Water. But then you have the Woodland Realm in Mirkwood, or Torrhen Dolados, the Forest of Great Fear. There, the Sindarian king Thranduil ruled a Sylvan people, and they dwelt there without the aid of a ring of power, facing the world's growing shadows with only their own ancient strength. And so the High Elves came to name their various kindreds, and they made these distinctions based on one single defining memory. Had their eyes ever beheld the light of the two trees in the Blessed Realm? Now, this distinction, it was never a judgment of worth. It was simply a record of the light their eyes had seen. The High Elves named those who had dwelt in Amen the Clock-Wendi, the Elves of the Light. This group included the Vanyar, the Noldor, and those Teleri who finally reached the shores of Valinor. You see, they carried within them a memory of the day before days, a light that truly set them apart from all others left in Middle-earth. All the others they called the Morroquendi, the Elves of the Darkness. Now, this name was given to everyone who never saw the trees. So that included both the Avari, who refused the summons right at the beginning, and all of the Elder who turned aside during the Great March. And among the Morroquendi, there's another special distinction for the Umanyar, which means those not of Aman. These elves weren't unwilling like the Avari. No, they were Eldar who actually set forth on the journey, but for one reason or another never reached the Blessed Realm. Chief among them, of course, were the noble Sindar of Beleriand and the Sylvan Nondor, the elves of Twilight and the Deep Woods. And so, the Firstborn, though they were one people in origin, became many in spirit. Yet, despite being sundered by choice and by long ages of the world, all elves who still lingered in the Hitherlands, they all shared one single fate, a deep and sorrowful yearning for the sea, a longing for the straight road into the west. And when at last the One Ring was destroyed, the power of the three elven rings failed. The ring-bearers passed over the sea, and with them the last true memory of the Elder Days faded from Middle-earth. The dominion of men had begun. But the straight road, it remained open for the last remnant of the Firstborn, beckoning them ever westward, toward a unity they had not known since they first awoke by the starlit waters of Cuiviénen.